Hope for a gerrymandering solution and the ECOT effect on the 2018 campaign. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Jesse Balmert, State House reporter for the Cincinnati Enquirer. Julie Carr-Smythe, State House correspondent for the Associated Press. Sam Gresham of Common Cause Ohio, and Mark Weaver, Republican strategist. Just like the districts they hope to eliminate, gerrymandering reform negotiations are taking a winding path towards a possible resolution. Republican lawmakers and advocates for redistricting reform spent hours and hours this week negotiating a plan that would eliminate this: a congressional district map with a thin district that runs along Lake Erie, another one that travels from suburban Dayton to suburban Cleveland, and one in Franklin County that doubles as a Rorschach test. The week came to an end with the two sides making progress, but still no deal to put a consensus plan before voters. Sam Gresham, with Common Cause, you are involved with these negotiations. What's the biggest sticking point right now? The biggest sticking point is where we are as a base. We don't want districts to favor or disfavor in the candidate. That's a major sticking point. We don't want districts cracked. Communities of interest, we want them to be held together. We don't want counties to be split in 4 different ways, or to split urban counties and leave rural counties whole. We don't want to do that. We're disappointed because we hoped there was some sincerity, but the basic foundation, disfavor and not favor, is fundamental to us, and the other side can't get with that.
What's interesting about this dispute is that the liberal groups that have been pushing for redistricting reform, they're well funded from special interest in D.C. They put forward this notion of what they call representative fairness, and they're saying that there ought to be a certain percentage of Republican seats and a certain percentage of Democrat seats. Up until recently, they have been arguing for competitive seats, which I think is a good idea. Competitive seats. Are you looking for a split between even number of Republican congressmen and Democrats?
We're looking for representative seats that are competitive.
Competitive is fine, but the notion of looking at the past elections and then allocating some seats to be designated Republican and others as Democrat will exacerbate the problem that we're trying to fix, which is when you're in a safe Republican seat, you move to the right. When you're in a safe Democrat seat, you move to the left.
But and what's interesting to me about this is that you're always looking at those people who have voted and voted most recently and over time. And I think there's been a lot of disenfranchisement of voters who, because of these maps, that people are like, why should I even bother? Right. If I'm a Democrat in Delaware County, if I'm a Republican in Cleveland, why should I even go to the polls? So how do you use those numbers to try to make a reasonable map and a reasonable guess?
Jesse, is there any way to avoid splitting counties? You look at Franklin County, it's 1.2, 1.3 million people. I mean, it's going to be split at some point. It's hard to not divide these big counties.
Yeah, so I think there are some counties that you can avoid splitting. Like you said, I think Columbus in and of itself is almost a congressional district. And so I think that one of the other sticking points that the people I was talking with said was the number of splits. I think the most recent plan from Republican Senator Matt Huffman was to have 28 splits. I think the Democrats and the ballot initiative groups would like fewer than that. I keep asking, how many do you want? And they just say, limiting the splits.
All right, Sam, how many do you want?
I'm not going to put a number on it. I'm going to go back to the base, and the base is districts that don't favor and disfavor any political parties. Now, people may laugh at this notion, but we have run competitions for 5 years in which we offered a prize for a person to do that. They have drawn districts that meet our criteria, so it's possible. Now, the politics of it is, and the power of it is, if you look at Ohio, it is almost 50-50 Republicans and Democrats. But if you look at the congressional delegation, it's overwhelmingly
Well, but you
Republican.
look at the statewide elected office holders, and they're all Republican. Ohio leans Republican. There's two factors you can't take out of redistricting no matter what you do. One is that people who are like one another tend to move towards other people like themselves. That will always be true. And number two, taking the politics out of redistricting is like trying to take the snow out of snow cones. You are moving
I
the
disagree.
politics from
I
one
disagree.
kind. The liberal groups
disagree.
are advancing the changes because they'd like to see more liberal.
But Republican groups don't want it to change because
Well,
they
and
got,
that's-
as John Boehner
Because
says,
they have
like
all the
map.
advantages.
That's the politics I'm talking about. That's why it is true.
So it's not just one
This is a
side that's
political,
doing it.
exactly. This is a political process, and currently the elected representatives of the state, the General Assembly, decide the congressional districts. And if voters are unhappy, they can replace their elected
Well,
representatives.
we're going to do that. We're going to take care
That's
of
the way
that
to do
in the
it.
next. But your proposition is not true. What they have done is Democrats run all the major cities in Ohio. No Republican mayor runs a major city. And you say the majority, it's a Republican state. It's a majority of Republican state in the rule. But politically, it's almost 50-50.
Why do Republicans own every statewide office except Sherrod Brown?
I think that's a temporary.
You can't gerrymander a state.
2006, they didn't.
Well, that's right, and that was an
That's
odd
right.
wave,
We
and you're
are
going to
a
get your.
swing state.
That's why we're not a red state. We are a red-leaning state. We're not Wyoming, that's going to be Republican nearly all.
Yeah,
the time.
But I will just say that AP did a analysis nationwide of that, and we did find that in Ohio there are 2 more Republicans in Congress than would have been the case under a neutral circumstances. And that means, in other words, maybe 75% of the seats went to Republicans and only about 50% of the votes went to.
And another kind of stress on all of this is Ohio is expected to lose a congressional seat
Right.
because our population is growing, but not as quickly as some other places. And so we're going from 16 to 15. You know, you're a little concerned about the musical chairs of who's going to be left out.
Sam, they're hoping to resume negotiations late this weekend. Will we have a deal before the filing deadline to get this on the May ballot?
I don't predict that we're going to have a deal because I think we're too far apart. We're not going to give up on our issue of disfavoring or favoring a district. We're not going to give up on our issue of splitting the urban areas the way they have split the urban areas. We're just not going to give up on that. Now, if they want to compromise, we'll compromise.
Okay. Let's get to our next topic. If a redistricting discussion did not put you on the edge of your seat, our next topic certainly will. Campaign finance reports. This week they provided an early look at the strength of the campaigns for governor. Mike DeWine leads the way with $10.5 million. Half of that came from his running mate John Huston's campaign. Next, Mary Taylor with $3.5 million. Most of that she loaned to herself from her own account to her campaign. Richard Cordray got a late start. He has raised $2 million in the past couple of months. His Democratic opponent, Connie Pillich, has about $1 million, and Joe Schiavone has about $250,000. Democrats Bill O'Neill and Dennis Kucinich did not file because they just entered the race. Campaign money, it's the foundation for campaigns, Mark. What do these numbers show you about where the race for governor stands?
Let's talk
right
about
now?
the Republican primary first. This shows that Mike DeWine and John Huston are almost certainly going to be our nominees. The merger of those 2 tickets really ended the discussion. Mary Taylor's a good person. She's not going to be our nominee. On the Democrat side, we know Richard Cordray can raise money. However, he now has a serious primary. Bill O'Neill's got outstanding name identification because of the nature of his last name. Dennis Kucinich has a national following among some folks, and in Cleveland, among some folks, he's revered. Richard Cordray is going to have to spend a bunch of this money just to get through the Democrat primary.
Why is Mary Taylor loaning herself $3 million?
Because people like you will create graphics like that you'll put up on the screen that will show $3 million, and then it'll show that she's competitive when she's not.
So she's trying to send a signal to her donors that she has money and they should invest.
And she does have some money. Whether or not she's willing to spend all that, I mean, she's just too far to really catch up to John Huston and Mike DeWine. This would have been a real primary but the merger happened.
Right, and I think that in the case of Cordray, as you said, he got in late. He can raise money, but having to spend in this primary is going to be an interesting factor for him. I'm not sure, Bill O'Neill, that this ballot ID issue in a partisan primary where people know who they're voting for is necessarily as valuable as it is in a court primary, where a lot of times people are jumping on names
right.
because they have no other thing to go on.
There's no D or R after their name.
But Kucinich, for sure, I mean, he seems to be quite organized. He put out a new policy brief today on education. He's been out already with a policy brief on fracking. You know, we talked about that in the past. I don't know how workable these things are, but he's most certainly getting out there on the policy stump.
Yeah, he wants to end fracking and ban donations from charter school operators to politicians. Jesse, Connie Pillich, Joe Schiavone still in the race. Connie Pillich, $1 million, nothing to really sneeze at, but it's still half of what Richard Cordray has.
Yeah, I mean, I think they are sticking in it. Like we said, with a 5-way primary, it's not a horrible idea to do, but they're certainly behind Rich Cordray, and Rich Cordray needed to make this statement that he is the fundraiser that he could be and that Democrats hoped he would be, and that some of the other candidates really didn't live up to their billing, including his running mate, Betty Sutton. There was a lot of talk about how she would bring in a lot of money from national sources and really didn't on her own, at least.
Sam, how worried should Democrats be about the competitive primary on their side, or could they use it to their advantage to get some news coverage and expose their eventual?
I think Mark is correct about one thing. They're going to spend money. And if they didn't have a real primary, they wouldn't have to spend money. But I think that when it comes to the general, when we get to the general, the wave is coming, or this perceived wave that the media. It's going to be a very interesting campaign. DeWine versus Cordray, and the wave. I don't want people don't dismiss the wave, because there is a national wave occurring, and those things do happen. And I think this year will generate a wave.
Speaking of that, Connie Pillich did campaign this week with Ed Rendell, the former governor of Pennsylvania, and she believes the wave is in favor of women. You know, Mark's saying this was a signal that Mary Taylor may not be successful on the Republican side, but it's interesting with dividing those votes 5 ways, whether Connie Pillich can make any kind of a showing. Joe Schiavone's still optimistic.
They all stay in, do you think, after the filing deadline? They all
I
stay
think they
into
do.
the primary? Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's one left. I'm not sure who, but there's one more candidate who will not file. I'm not sure. I think you'll see a dropout.
Okay. Our next topic, Ohio Democrats not only think they have an unpopular president to run against, they think they have a scandal that touches primarily Republicans. The online charter school ECOT closed last week after the state found the school collected tens of millions of dollars for students that were not actively enrolled. ECOT and its founder, Bill Lager, were big political donors. Most of their money went to Republicans. Top Democrats think ECOT could be worse than the rare coin scandal that ensnared Republicans in 2006.
ECOT is CoinGate on steroids. It's a lot more money. It's a lot more money probably right now than we even appreciate. 80 million lost is only 2 years' worth. ECOT was giving money at all levels. Almost everyone on this statewide ticket took money. The Republican Party took enormous amount of money.
Julie Carr Smythe, the rare coins was kind of simple to understand. Charter schools and ECOT's a little more complicated to understand. Is it really comparable, the two situations?
It is not necessarily comparable at all, because in the case of CoinGate, there was known crime that had occurred. There was, some people went to prison over it. At this point, what we have is questions about attendance records and whether these were kept properly, a legal dispute over whether or not the school had done its due diligence in trying to tell the truth about who it was educating. That is a little bit in the weeds for people. However, to David Pepper's point, I do think that certainly on the Democratic side, this has been a talking point for years, and the fact that we now have this $80 million some dollars, that there looks to be no way to get back, is certainly a strong talking point for them heading into the election.
There's another key difference here, that it was a Republican administration, John Kasich's Department of Education, that made sure that the policies against ECOT were enforced, and it was a Republican auditor of state, Dave Yost, who has held ECOT accountable. We didn't see that quite to the same extent during the the charter school thing. I think, I'm sorry, in the CoinGate thing, I think David Pepper's fevered dreams is that 2018 will be like 2006. I don't think that's the case. I don't think this is the same kind of issue.
But you can see the ads. You know, you see all the money that John Husted received, the Republican parties received. Mike DeWine, less than John Husted, but still some money. Mary Taylor got some money. You can see the ads scrolling on the screen, all this money and 12,000 students.
You can do those ads, and you can see the money the teachers union have given to the Democrats for urban schools that are failing, where kids are not safe to walk out the hallways, and
But
the
then
ads go either way.
people are not bagging money and walking away with stuff
sure, the
that
teachers
looks a
union
little
make a lot of money.
scandalous. I think it's a little different. I think it's a major stain, and the Democrats may use it. And if I was them, I would use it, because a lot of people did pocket a lot of money, and the school lied. It did not.
I'm not gonna
And
defend
Republicans in the administration covered it up for years. If it wasn't for the press nailing them on this thing, it wouldn't have.
This
It
is
wouldn't
a
have
primary.
occurred.
David Yost was out here early on in this case. This is a primary election issue for Democrats. The teachers union support matters. In the general election, this will not be a big issue.
Jesse, it's, ECOT, when you're criticizing ECOT, you're also criticizing charter schools. And I can see the defenders of charter schools saying Democrats are just trying to shut down charter schools, and that's why they're attacking ECOT. Could there be a backlash? Could it backfire on Democrats by going after a charter school?
Well, I think ECOT is a little bit different than charter schools generally, just given its size and all of the money that it owes to the state and all of the problems that it's had, and even how many donations it's given to lawmakers. I think there are good charter schools in Ohio, but ECOT certainly puts a stain on them in general.
Well, and I think that there's a good possibility that what will happen is a key distinction will be made about online charter schools.
Right.
The fact whether, I mean, this whole debate has brought out, can we ever accurately track how these kids are
Although
being...
there are very good online charter schools out there that are nothing like ECOT. They have a great success story. So ECOT's an outlier.
True.
Sam, you talk about the wave that's coming. So we have Trump, whose popularity rating is, in the 30s, low 40s maybe. You have this potential scandal. So Democrats are running against Donald Trump. They're running against ECOT. Is there a danger that they're not going to be for something, and that'll hurt them in November?
I think you have to be for something, and you have to have attractive candidates. People have to like the people you want to vote for, and they have to stand on some principles that people are attracted to. When you have candidates like that, you win. The wave is 25% of the game. 75%, good candidates, be able to raise money and have good positions. But waves do come, and they come for stupid reasons, but waves do come. In 2006, Democrats ran everything, and they got that because of a wave.
Yeah, there's going to be a wave. The question is whether it splashes your knees or knocks over your beachfront house. And the latest generic ballot testing shows that the wave of a month ago is a lot smaller than the wave of now. My guess is that wave will change several times between now and next October.
What to say about generic candidates, though?
Well, listen, I'm for them.
They never break their promises, those generic candidates. They always tell the truth.
I'm not for that. I need to know what you say.
Anyway, the topic of sexual harassment and inappropriate behavior still hangs over the State House. The latest controversy involves State Senator Matt Huffman and State Rep Bill Seitz, who made offensive comments at a recent farewell party for a GOP staffer. The event occurred after hours and off State House grounds, but the comments were lewd, and they were aimed at women at the State House. While some Democrats call for the lawmakers to be punished, even resign, leaders are not going there yet.
We're continuing to have conversations with Senator Seitz about this issue, and I think, again, we need to focus on what we need to do to continue to make sure we're providing the correct training and providing the correct environment that fixes the situation in a broad term.
Obviously, Speaker Rosenberger misspoke. It's Representative Seitz, just a verbal typo. But Jesse, an apology and a working group, is that going to satisfy critics of the culture at the State House, alleged culture at the State House, and women particularly at the State House?
Well, I would say there was a group of 4 Democratic lawmakers that came out yesterday, all females, and said that no, this wasn't enough for them, that they felt like Representative Seitz should lose some sort of leadership or perhaps committee position over this. They called for him to resign. So I don't think they are going to be satisfied with a working group and so forth. I think the Speaker and the Senate President are saying, they apologize. The people who were directly affected by this have not filed a complaint or requested that these two individuals resign. And so that's kind of where it stands.
I think it's important to remember that just like in the criminal law, we have felonies, misdemeanors, and parking tickets. In the Me Too era, we have that as well. Sexual assault's the worst. You need to go to prison. Sexual harassment is bad. You should be sued. Saying stupid things, you should apologize. They're all wrong, but they're different levels of wrong.
No.
And we didn't see the outrage from these same Democrat legislators when we had a Democrat Supreme Court justice talking about how many women he's bedded, including one in a hayloft.
There was some outrage.
There was outrage.
Not from the people
No.
who had that press conference. They didn't come
Betty
out and say
Sutton
that he
and
needs.
Connie Pillars.
Yeah, but
If
not the
people
who
are
had that
willing
press
to do that in public and disrespect people, and they are lawmakers,
Yeah, they should
what does that
apologize.
say about the
It says
foundation
they
of how
should
they think about law?
apologize.
No,
You
it
don't think
doesn't
they
say
should
that.
apologize?
No,
I think they
among
should.
apologizing and leaving, because that attitude spills over into lawmaking. And Sykes is an influential
This is how they
legislator.
leave. The voters tell them to leave. That's the system. When you make a mistake, the voters should hold you accountable. And if the voters want to hold these representatives and senators accountable, they can.
But we are seeing in some other states lawmakers not only being asked to resign, but in one state being forced out.
Well, those are sexual harassment cases. Those
right,
were not
right.
comments. Those are relationships with staff.
Right,
Which is
and that's
against the
where,
law.
back to your
It's
point
against the law to
of
do
of
that.
the levels, but it is an era now, in the Senate where it's like we're not necessarily just saying you need to apologize. People are being asked to resign, and that's what they wanted from Bill Seitz.
I think what's surprising about this, I feel it in the workplace. After all this, you are extremely careful about what you say. And you are afraid that anything you say, especially as a guy, is going to be misconstrued. These comments, Mark, came a week after Senate and House training sessions on sexual harassment. Does that make that violation a little bit worse?
Yeah, I think these were dumb things to say at this private meeting where people were drinking. I've been to several private meetings where people are drinking in my life where people say stupid things. If that's the new standard, every viewer here knows somebody or themselves had said something stupid in a private
Mark,
meeting after they've been
I
drinking.
wish that attitude did not bleed over into legislation, but it does. And you
can do the
can't.
legislation?
Yeah, yes,
of
it
course
does.
it does. That's
I
ridiculous.
can tell
Not
you
at all.
incidents of some of these legislators where you knew how they stood, but now you have an example of what they really feel.
Yeah, no,
but you
there's a
could
big
read
difference
it. You
And
could
we-
read it, and what the questions they ask, and the things they say when you were in the hall.
We did see an incident in a committee meeting that was brought out in some media reports. I was not there, but where apparently a male legislator kind of attacked a witness who was female in a way that felt to that person as if it wouldn't have happened had she been a man.
A lot of women leaders I know want to be treated like anybody else, and if they have a bad idea, they expect to be attacked, and if they have a good idea, they expect to be praised. Treating people like people is the way to go here.
All right,
I
let's
don't
get
know
to
what that means, though, Mark. I'm not sure.
Treating people the same.
Okay.
All right. Let's get to our last topic. Turning to Columbus City politics briefly, Mayor Ginther and City Council proposed changes to the city's tax abatement program. The city's tax breaks for expensive condo projects in the short north face growing criticism. Critics call them unnecessary rewards for developers' campaign donations. Under this plan, the city would not do away with those tax breaks for nice neighborhoods, but those deals would come with more strings attached. Minimum requirements for affordable housing, a $15 minimum wage for folks who work in those buildings. Developers in struggling neighborhoods would face fewer restrictions to get a tax break. Sam Gresham, is this a solution, a step in the right direction? What do you think about
I
this?
think it's about time. I think it's about time how people were complaining that people were getting benefits from taxes that they really didn't need. You don't need tax abatement in the short north now. The market's there, parking garages are there. What I love about the proposals is to set aside on affordable housing and for people with incomes. I think that's necessary. One of the things that's always bothered me about improvements in these novel communities is it required poor people and black people to leave those communities. I mean, when they came into the short north, when they came into, be honest,
Town East,
Old
Detroit
Town
Village.
East, and be honest with you, most of the gentrified areas, black folk and poor people have to leave. So putting this component in, I think, helps.
Why not just do away with tax breaks for the short north? It's doing pretty well.
How about just let the market decide here? I mean, what we're seeing in Columbus, and I know my friend Sam will agree, is we have a one-party controlled culture of corruption where contributions are driving policy in a bad way. Let the marketplace
But
decide.
don't you need help in a struggling neighborhood like Linden or the Hilltop? Don't you need a little bit of help from the government?
It depends how you define help, and different people will define the need for help depending on where they represent. So where you're from, you're going to say we need help, and somebody else is going to say we need help, and all of a sudden we all need help. And you know what? Levels the playing field is a free market.
Okay.
We don't?
We got to get off the
Okay.
record comments.
All right.
You're up soon, Julie. Mark Weaver, you go first.
Ohio Democrat Party Chairman David Pepper is facing calls for resignation. He suggested to Ohio Congressman Brad Wenstrup that Brad had no courage. That's a problem because Brad, of course, is a Bronze Star winning combat surgeon from Iraq who also saved Steve Scalise's life at the baseball field. Look for David Pepper to say mea culpa.
Sam.
I think the issue of housing is going to mushroom in the city of Columbus. I think this is an opportunity for the city to do some good things.
Affordable housing.
Affordable housing, yes.
Julie, now you're up.
Well, I'll just go to my final comment, which is that this coming week there's going to be, finally, February 7th will be here, and that will be the final day when we'll get to see what our governor's race looks like, what our ballot looks like. It could be redistricting or not. We could have a redistricting on this May and a separate one in November.
And Jesse.
So Cincinnati Zoo's famous hippo Fiona made a prediction about the Super Bowl this weekend and said that the Eagles are going to win. So I'm sorry, Mike.
Sorry to disappoint Fiona.
You can't trust a Cincinnati hippo.
Cincinnati Hippos. I don't get predictions correct often, but I did predict after the Indians lost the World Series to the Cubs that Chief Wahoo's days were numbered. I was off by a year, but Chief Wahoo's days are officially numbered, at least in the ballpark in Cleveland. And for those who are offended by another team's logo, the Pats are going to win this weekend. Sorry, Fiona. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, and you can see each show on demand at our website, wosu.org. For our crew and for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.